Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Unscripted and Unchoreographed. I'm your host, Neve, and I am very excited to have the one and only Ami here today, who's an incredible creative artist, actor, dancer, movement director, choreographer. So yeah, we're going to start as we always start. How did you get started in the arts? Was it at a very young age? Was it later in life? Did your family have any arts practices that they did? Or yeah.
Yes, I actually started acting when I was 3 years old. I worked as a child actor on the stage and television, movie, and commercials. However, when I went to university, I chose a completely different path. I studied engineering science, and then I wanted to understand how system works, how human structure are built, and even what human beings are. But after graduating, I returned to acting, and then I felt strongly a need to serious study what actually acting is. And then I trained mainly in American Realism acting, and then I very luckily meet extraordinary teacher in Japan and who studied and worked in US. And yeah, working with the text by Asamira and other American playwrights was taught a unique approach that combined sense memory with breathing technique from Japanese martial arts. I continued acting, but I began to feel a desire to direct my own work. So using my science background, I created and presented original pieces that explore the conflict of living within the modern system. So socially, technologically, and emotionally. So through this process, I noticed it's something important that even though I had a strong background in dance and movement was rarely discussed in the acting rehearsal. And I saw many actors who could access emotion very well, but whose bodies remained very stilled or very disconnected. And then I could sense that movement was missing, and yeah, but I didn't yet know how to guide actors to physically and without a forcing choreography or a very formatic approach onto them. Yeah, the questions stay with me. So eventually I came to UK and I discovered MFA in movement directing teaching at the Royal Central School, speech and drama. And then, yeah, it was a very great opportunity for me. This is the kind of it offers me language and a framework for the questions, and I have been carrying for years to dissolve the binary thoughts in an in approach or out approach or self and character. And in my practice, mostly combines the principles of discipline, of authentic movement, so and then viewpoint mainly, and then I'm interested in how inner impulse and an outer impulse form meet and combine and merge together authentically. Yes, and then yes, the encounters I had with my classmates there, including uni, were truly inspiring. We challenged and stimulated each other, and learning through shared curiosity and a deep listening. And one of my closest ongoing collaborators with Daniela, also one of my classmates, and through shared practices such as Buto, and also through her methodology rooted in cellular membrane, we resonate deeply around the idea fluid identity. Yeah, so I'm very looking forward to collaborating with her projects. And then currently, as a director, I'm directing a theater production, Net Café Refugee, which will be presented on March 25th at Camden People's Theater. And this play, actually, we already showed in this last summer, the Camden Fringe Festival, and it got the 5-star review, which is great. Yeah, so we're gonna revival of this version. And then also at the same time, I'm also developing my new project in the merge dance and a theater. I always confused about this the gap of a dance society and theater society in the languages as well. So I try to merge deep collaboration with dance theater with a Tanztheater practitioner Adrian. Yeah, that's my current working process.
I kind of want to I want to delve into all of it, but I want to kind of move backwards back to what was it like being a child actor?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the beginning of beginning, so my mom saw me like dancing and performing in the inside the house after watching a musical Lion King. I'm so impressed with musical Lion King, and then I wanted to be a lion, and then put the ears and little lion's tail, and after came back from kindergartens, and then I walk like a lion and roaring and dancing, and then, yeah, and it's so my mom saw me and said, yeah, she should be trained performing. And then, yeah, I went to like a theater training institution, but at the same time, like a agency for child actors. And then I wasn't fully aware like what's happening, what's going on. But yeah, it's like, yeah, these days you need to go to this audition. Okay, my mom took me there, and then I just like the director asked, and then like laughing or like Joanne, cheering, But I'm very luckily I had the two significant theater experiences, and that's it changed my life, to be honest. And then one production was international collaboration. And then the director was a French, Emmanuelle. She strongly emphasizes on authentic acting and authentic reaction. Even opera is pretty rare, I think. But while singing, she gave me real ice cream. And then I was a very cheeky child. So like I even like very slight moment to lick the ice cream. I did it. So like while singing, I was pause and lick it. I think it's just that's so authentic, like a kid should be like that. So yeah, the director I think is really loved it, and then yeah, that was like on my mind because like child actors always ask something and then like did it like like a very exaggerated reaction or yeah like what they ask for and then that's yeah in a way like a train as like a good student, but yeah I was pretty impressed like what actually yeah acting is and what human being is and what should I representing towards audience. That's yeah changed my turning point. Yeah.
That is genius. I think if there's ever an ice cream on stage, it needs to be real. I'd say that was so cute to watch as well. I'd say the director was just like, she thinks I can't see, but I can. I'd say it was so cute. And as you say, so real, so authentic for a little child to do. My next question, Ami, was kind of you kind of mentioned it, but you are an incredible dancer and you did a lot of different dance styles. Maybe you could, and you did a lot of competitions as well. That's correct, yeah. Maybe you could explain all the different styles of dance that you do and what it's like to compete.
Yeah, so I started classical ballet from I think 5 years old, and then also I wanted to be a musical dancer, musical actor. So yes, classical ballet is the actual fundamental skill. So yeah, my mom took me the lessons, and then I think at least 2 classes in a week. So I couldn't join like a school activity that much because of the ballet classes. But in a way, like I liked dancing, but I didn't like classical ballet that much because like teacher is so strict, and then like it's cold and yelling, and yeah it's like no not that way, that kind of very forceful style of teaching. She was a lovely person, but at the same time it's like style itself like always like compared to others and like how flexible you are, and then always like so embarrassing if you mistook the patterns and yeah forms. So like yeah always I felt pressure during the training. So eventually I noticed like yeah I'm not fully fan of this training. And then I discovered street dancing instead, and I went to hip hop classes and popping, locking, and much more free, much more like enjoying with just listening music and resonating with music. But at the same time, I also not fully get in the culture at the same time. Like they had a lot of like hip hop, like a rebellion. I think it's like, I mean, if I had like full knowledge of like a African influence and the rebellion in the America, that kind of history, I think I could enjoy much more. But I don't think Japanese people didn't know that, the much depths as well. Like, yeah, I felt also imitating, to be honest. And then like, yeah, acting pathway as well, like, like what is the realistic and what is the, authentic. And then, thinking about it also like, yeah, I'm not fully get into that, like the culture. I really like the style though. And then like, I wanted like pair dancing. I wanted to do pair dancing. And then I discovered ballroom dance in the university. I just impressed by the techniques and they works very well and skill set and the passion of dancing together. And then full 4 years, I obsessed with it. I literally like thinking backwards. I think it's obsessed too much for practicing the dancing. And then like every single of free time, I just went to the practicing room and I called my partner and then practice. I even didn't wear the heel that much before learning this ballroom dancing, so it's like it's literally ruined my legs and feet, but still going, and yeah, it's very like tricky balance of it, like because like, our aim is to win the competition, and then but actually what is the criteria of competition is quite ambiguous. And then who learns which teacher is quite matters in the end, and then which style, like this teacher style you inherited, so like a check, like that kind of, also politics happen in the end. And also like unfortunately said, Japanese ballroom dancing also starts in the end, like end up imitating the like a Latin American, like Latin American should be more, tan skin, so like like need a little bit tanned, though the dull and foundation, it's I'm really competitive person, I literally practice very hard. Yeah, in the end, like a little bit like when I was graduating university, my teacher asked me like, why don't you going to be like professional path? But I'm not sure, because like, yeah, what is the authentic and what, yeah, it's a why, yeah, I keep just wondering. And then don't get me wrong, there are very good dancers in Japan too, and also many Chinese dancers nowadays is pretty good ranking as well in the world. But yeah, still, yeah, decolonizing, thinking about everything, and then quite pretty difficult position, I think.
It's so interesting that this question of the authentic self, which is so important in the arts, in no matter what, has kind of, because when you are, I know you, Amy, are a very authentic person, and it's so interesting because you're competitive, and you have all these skills at a very high level, but it's always like that question your teacher said to you, would you not go professional? Like, you're there, you can do it, and you're like, your morality or authentic self is saying, well, there's something telling me this is not. I think to have that as an artist is so important. So you were doing your competitions and dancing through university when you were studying engineering. Wow. So how was that? How was balancing that? And also, yeah, when I suppose maybe before you went to university, when did you decide, okay, engineering is the route I'm going to take? And then afterwards, when was it was like, no, I need to go back to the arts? Because we've had this question before in terms of a lot of artists studying something else in university, and it's actually quite useful.
Yeah, I chose to study science because I wanted to understand like human beings. Then, yeah, that was actually like I think it's the 5 or 4 years since I was 4 or 5 years old. I keep wondering like how actually body works and then why we're moving and who moving. It's at the time I didn't know how brain work and blah blah. So like I just wondering like what is the actual human beings and existing as well, like quite fundamental question. And then at first I believed the science could explain it, like our behavior, decisions, and system. But and then yes, in many ways it does, but like funny ways, like it finds structures and patterns and then try to explain the complexity into numbers and a little bit like more sort it out in a clear way. But I went a little bit deep. I began to like feel a little bit gap, and then also what the system was asking for and what I truly wanted to see want like exactly the same. And the science often looks so clarity and efficiency, and the things can be measured. And then I a little bit wanted to see a little bit more bigger picture, and then also like here now why we are struggling so much and why like communication is so difficult between us, and feel disconnected. And in the system we found that this is it's in a way like I enjoy the statics, but no one can go for the average. It's not we can take average, but it's no one like have a like total average person. You know what I mean? It's like we have a difference. We are like complex being, and then like I should be a little bit like different pathway to look through. I don't know. That's like beginning of my wondering, and then decide to return to the acting and the artistry. And so I quite struggle for myself as a movement director sometimes. I think it's the production side ask quite often movement director and also choreographer is like bring their style, and then could you please like add on like flavor on it, or like like a strong style. I don't know, like for instance like modern dancing background or classical dancing background or like hip hop dancing background. Oh, that's cool. And then could you please bring that element onto this program, and then that's which I have a lot of dance background, but in the end I think it's still my main goal is like I want bring the performers uniqueness and strengths to shine through authentically. So it's not like I don't want to like impose my style onto it. So that's a struggle. Like why don't you like like give the idea blah blah blah. But I have idea, but it's not not comes from strong my background. It makes sense.
That's so interesting, Emmy, because you're so right. And it makes, I think what you've just said is like the difference between a choreographer and a movement director. It's like choreographer is there to choreograph a dance that, a movement director is kind of like, I think Chandler described it, it's kind of like the middle point. It's the person in the middle to, as what you've been talking about, which makes sense why you're such a good movement director, is finding the actor's authentic self in order to find the character's authentic self and present that physically, emotionally, mind, body. That's so interesting.
Yeah, and also like a production, for instance, production side, for instance, for casting or like it's just, from the top beginning, we could discuss a director, movement director, like, okay, we definitely need the element of, I don't know, for instance, ballroom dancing for this piece. And then, okay, casting is like, movable dancers or like experienced in ballroom dancing or like, if that kind of creative decision happened in the beginning and then apply to it, I literally, I don't, like, I'm not against it. I'm happy to bring my background, but yeah, it's quite often like a movement director comes in and then like, yeah, could you please do something? It's like, oh yes, I could offer, but I think pretty difficult. And then in the end, it's completely not their body. They cannot embody through the creative world, and yeah, it's super difficult position sometimes. Movement director is.
Going back then to you deciding to do the MFA and to do movement directing and go to the UK, at what point did that happen for you? Are there many movement directors in Japan or?
No.
Please tell us. How did you hear about it?
So when I was Japan and I studied and directed my piece, and I wonder how should I develop my career and my even deeper understanding of the direction. Unfortunately, couldn't find the right path in Japan. Compared to UK, to be honest, there are no school offer the proper education as a director, and also like sometimes like many like all sorts of styles and the teachers coming in and then teach a little bit and then say bye. Teach like showing a little grasp of their style and then nothing combined with like structural curriculum is more randomly teaching. So like I always like keep wondering and how can I develop my directing acting skill. And then I coincidentally watched the National Theater live in Japan. And then I so amazed UK's productions and this witty and creative and sophisticated at the same time. And oh yes, I really want to learn UK theater. And then like that's the starting point of considering studying abroad. But I couldn't speak English well at the time. I study it. I actually, I study a lot, but I think it's this speaking training not enough at all. So I firstly came here as a volunteer worker and then tried to a little bit like get used to speaking the local language. And then at the same time, I looked through like what sort of drama school in the UK and the teaching, what kind of direction style. And then like I discovered movement direction. Oh yeah, that's interesting. And then I never had before, but I think it's pretty like good spots on my interests. So I met many UK based Japanese actors and theater directors, and then like try to learn like what did you learn from your school. And then I was thinking also like actor training, but he also said I think it's acting also like sort of like introducing some skills and technique and then bye literally. And then it's that kind of the similar way of structure of in Japan. So yes. And then also I was wondering theater directing as well, but I'm not confident enough to connect all sort of departments. And then and also I think it's the movement direction is the things to actually needs to communicate with actors in person and then physically let the room by your body. And then that's what I really want to see, what really wants to discover. That's also a big decision for me.
And you made an excellent choice. You're an Like movement director with many skills. I was going to ask there just in terms of what are, if there is any, the big differences you have noticed between theater or the arts in general, including like screen, in Japan compared to maybe the UK.
Yes, many aspects. There are differences. I think basically because of language structure and language, I believe language formulates sort of thoughts and a way of thinking. And then that pretty affects acting itself. I maybe because I'm a second in an English non-native speaker. So that's why I kind of like have that kind of thought. But English sometimes I feel very horizontal language structure, like I did something because and that and then slightly more and more like goes to a deeper answer, but a little bit like a horizontal, and then that's like very suitable for the conflict conversation and like so blah 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 blah. But the B said like no, I thought this, blah, blah, blah. That kind of conflict happens, in the American Realism text as well. And yeah, lots of English texts. But Japanese acting is much more like feeling and sense-based. So like we can conversation. It's just like, a cup, a cup, a cup. Like it's just a single word, but it's just, like a feeling of it, like, yeah, high contextual language we have. So we don't have to explain and we don't have to have a strict structure like English. So it's much more like a vertical, I feel. So Japanese actors are very good at like express a feeling without saying, but at the same time can be very or it's complete other way. Or sometimes, like they try to learn Western acting methodology, and then suddenly like okay, so try to like imitating Western bodies and Western way of thinking, and then it's not authentic at all, and then that's like becomes like a super big exaggerating acting style sometimes I felt. But English acting is much more reasonable, logical way of thinking, and that's also sometimes like a disconnects the feeling and embodiment. And then that's while I teaching actors, is the British people really likes talking. So okay, talking enough. Let's move. It's makes them move. It's also my job, I feel, as a movement teacher.
That is fascinating. I mean, you've blown my mind. You need to like go do a PhD and be like a professor seriously. Because that is incredible and makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it kind of leads on to what you were kind of like studying as your kind of dissertation, or even just the questions you were asking about. I remember you were researching the colonized body, and that it would just completely blew my mind. Maybe if you wouldn't mind, like, talking about that, what you found out, and yeah, maybe your dissertation as well, if you'd like.
I always feel it's pretty difficult to explain other culture in English and then other way of speaking in English. And then that's also, yeah, it's a kind of like a colonizing, decolonizing structure. But so based on the performing research, I discovered fluid identity, fluid body, and actually is completely different way of thinking, depends on the culture background. Yeah, attached how your mental brain works attached to body and structures. That's the biggest like discovery for me. And then looking back Japanese culture, and while researching the Japanese history and through the MFA research, I discovered, yes, Asian Japanese people think much more body mind bit, unified way of thinking. But then after Western imperialism come, we need to, suddenly change, and we should, learn from the Western amazing sort of knowledge, and then, they change the way of walking as well, and a way of clothing, way of thinking and speaking, and then behavior itself. That's also, that's kind of fascinating, and then also modern Japanese people are quite struggling because of this like gap. I think it's the language itself and our culture itself build up certain like a feeling and thoughts and structure, but completely like a different new perspective is the mainstream. So that's like, the differences we are quite like have a conflict, I felt. But at the same time, we couldn't, of course, go back to the indigenous time, ancient times. Yeah, so that's all sort of like in a modern society, we need to find a way, look through the both way, and then how merge into how revise like what actually we are. And that's the main interest and my main goal, my outcome from my research, I felt.
That is so interesting, but also I think so important. Yeah, especially I think a lot of when the world I think has a general notion that like I don't know, like the Western way is better, and it's just not true, but it comes from this colonization. Yeah, but as you say, how can you go back, and how can you I think you've created a phenomenon.
I think while teaching, I also like felt, I believe this is helpful for all actors, but I think it's a pretty new teaching, a new perspective for them. And then sometimes I feel like a resistance, and then like I don't understand what you're saying, like that kind of struggling happen, and then I don't want to impose my way of thinking as well. That's a kind of like a decolonizing imposing. I don't want to do that, but I think it's the like main kind of like my aim of teaching is like through your body you would notice it. You would notice something happen inside and outside. That is not Western, Eastern colonized country, the colonizing country. So it's more like I don't like put like our practice into just the concept was more, like a little bit like soften, embody base. Yeah, that's pretty important.
So thank you so much, Ami, for your inspirations, intelligence, insights. I feel inspired right now. For our final question that we asked to everybody on the podcast, if you had a magic wand and could get the government or the powers that be to change anything in the arts, what would it be? And this could be in the world, in Japan, in the UK. This could also be like things you've noticed in that work in a certain country that should be implemented in another country.
I also like a realistic prospects, so obviously capitalistic and Western led world is sometimes I felt very annoying, and then I, in a way, like as I'm an immigrant, I think I pretty compared to white society people, I think it's nowadays a little bit like encouraged to make like your to tell own culture story, but at the same time I felt like super rebel, like, oh, you were immigrants, so you need to tell the like Japanese samurai history. It's like, what? I'm not samurai at all. So like it's so weird at the same time. It's kind of, I understand, like the times back and forth. And also like I understand money money guarantee the freedom and success and the creative resources, But also, I think it's pretty difficult to manage, like, in a capitalistic society, like artistry and, for instance, like, if you pay hourly, then, of course, I ask somebody to, work my project with, in calculation is like, it's impossible to make. It's like also without like without like accounting, there are definitely somehow like a lot of job, and then can we calculate it in hourly? Is that's also my struggle as well. But at the same time, you need to definitely get paid for, and then you need to eat, and you don't shouldn't be consumed like it's very selfishly with by commercial stuff. But at the same time, it's so difficult. Especially I'm now producing my work and creating a theater piece, and then I thinking about this. No way out. How can I make profit of it? That's a super big question, actually.
That is such a good point. I mean, all your points are so true, but the point you've just made in terms of especially for newer artists, or emerging, I should say, there's a lot of people now producing their own work, and how are they doing that? That's really, really interesting. Yeah, very tricky. I mean, I could talk to you all day. Thank you so, so much.